curiosity on overdrive. You feel a need for something, and it's coming alive. The moment is rising like you hoped it would. Who knew a tangent could feel so good? Let her take you on another tangent, turn a thought into a whole new planet. She'll make your sense of wonder feel gigantic. Ember lights the way like magic. You arrived to learn the facts, but you stayed for her glow. You heard her musical laugh, and her quick wit stole the show. The moment is rising like you hoped it would. Who knew a tangent could feel so good? Let her take you on another tangent, turn an idea into a whole new planet. She can piece the universe from fragments. Ember lights the dark like magic. Who knew a detour could hit like this? Smart mouth, star maps, and a sideways twist. No religion, just a mind on fire, taking us higher and higher and higher. Let her take you on another tangent, turn a thought into a whole new planet. She'll make your sense of wonder feel gigantic. Ember lights the way like magic.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Factual. If you're new here, my name is Ember, and I'm an intersex woman of transgender experience. And we gotta stop already to address some allegations. One moment. I wanna turn my camera on for this. Some people have been running around saying that I'm faking being trans to avoid the stigma of being intersex. Oh, wait, no, it's the other way. I'm faking being intersex to avoid the stigma of being trans. Either way makes just as much sense as the other. Now, I can kind of understand where they're coming from. If you're a conspiracy theorist, and being a TERF is the granddaddy of conspiracy theories, taking all the science denial of flat earth and all the bigotry of blood libel, adding in a dash of racism just for good measure, mix and spread on a crust of plain basic sexism, it's the conspiracy theory. All of medical science is lying to everyone because of some nefarious reason. And when you're in a conspiracy theory, you think about things a little differently. You don't bother to look into the facts. Why would you, when part of your deal is that every possible source of information is lying to you about the thing you really, really wish were true? So you just kind of make stuff up. And if the stuff you make up fits with the narrative you're trying to make real by the power of make-believe, then that's good enough. Just like a young earth creationist, you start with a conclusion, call that truth, no matter how false it is, and then judge all other information by how well it fits with your imaginary concept. That way, anything at all that shows that your starting position is really fucking stupid, well, that must be wrong. You might even say that's the main difference in worldviews between progressives and regressives. We want to know what's true, and we'll change our position based on new information. Y'all insist the thing you made up is not only just true, but the foundation of all truth, and new information must be lies from Satan trying to trick you. So, somebody makes up a thing. Intersex people aren't real. There's only two sexes, male and property. That's an awfully convenient presupposition considering how much trouble intersex people existing causes for your transphobic conspiracy theory. Or maybe y'all are trying to say intersex people do exist, but I'm not one. I can't be sure. You fuckers can't type coherent sentences to save your lives. I get that making shit up and then just believing that is how you're accustomed to handling business. But if that's the case, you have a couple of major problems this time. The first is that my being intersex is a matter of public record. We went through the whole process of finding out over the course of more than a year right here on this channel. It started out with discovering that I was assigned female on my original birth certificate when I tried to update my records as part of my transition, wound through a mess of phone calls, emails, tracking down old records, and finally some good old genetic tests. The second issue is that your motive / justification for the thing you made up doesn't work because I still identify as trans. How in the universe am I just pretending in order to escape being labeled as trans when I still publicly say I'm trans? What is wrong with you fools? Now, technically, your team would classify me as a detransitioner, and you all make a big pretense of being filled with love and support for people trying to get back to their true God-given sex, but not for me, though. The fact I'm very vocally in favor of gender-affirming care for everyone who needs it, both cis and normal, means I have to be the enemy. And so your principles go right out the window. You stand for nothing and will grasp on any lie in order to hate on innocent people, because that is the fundamental difference between the accepting, inclusive group of people and the hateful, exclusive group of people. We include people for the betterment of all. You exclude because you're afraid, you're full of hate, and you're bitter. And it shows in every single thing you do. That's the demonstrable truth. As I was saying, my name is Ember, and I'm an intersex woman of transgender experience with a background in science and the arts. But on this show, we like to talk about stories relating to trans and intersex people like me, mostly. Please take a second to hit the subscribe button. It really helps. Thank you for joining me. All right. I'm going to go back behind my curtain because I just don't have the energy for that. It is not the day. We're doing a bit more chill today, folks. We're trying to relax a little. The last many months have been stressful, and the life, it is just not being nice. So we're trying a more chill thing. As I've mentioned before, view counts don't actually matter anymore. So we're doing horizontal because people seem to like that better, even though people don't come for these for some reason. The same people will come in the vertical, and I appreciate them watching, but they'll say how much they hate the vertical. And then when we do a horizontal, they just don't show up. It's very strange. Now, of course, I'm generalizing. I appreciate all of you folks who are here. I realize that it's probably something with the algorithm that it's just not giving people alerts about horizontal streams. But whatever. We're going to do this. We're going to do it this way, at least for now, because I wanna. And that's kind of, why I'm doing anything on this channel. All right. I do have one additional announcement. I'm off camera because I look like shit and I feel like shit, but also because, as Clairview demonstrates, you don't actually have to be on camera to do really well. So fuck that. In any case, we have a bunch of stuff to talk about. The first thing I want to bring up, it's still Disability Pride Month, and there have been a lot of waves. There have been a lot of people very annoyed about the fact that there's a Disability Pride Month I guess they don't like disabled people existing either. I can't imagine why. But we do have a disability pride flag made of space, a space pride flag, disability space pride flag. This is the flag version. There's also a sticker version. And of course, the digital version is running around. It's available as an emoji on this channel, on Skeptic Haven, on my Discord server, probably on at least one other Discord server at this point, because shenanigans have been happening. In any case, it's around if you want to play with the digital image. If you want a physical flag, astralpride.com. Sticker, same thing, although the stickers are considerably, more affordable. And you can stick them on things, which is a big plus. But I wanted to put that out there. All right. All of that said, let's do a story that's related to our top story after a fashion, because I want to start out a little bit light, a little bit fascinating. Let's go to New Zealand. All right. So this is an article from newsroom.co.nz. Basically, a minister of parliament proposed a bill of defining sex for no real reason. There's no reason to do that, but they proposed a bill to do it. And they forgot about intersex people, as is often the case, virtually always, in fact. It seems like the only time that intersex people get mentioned in laws is when there's laws meant to screw over trans people, and they make a carve out to also screw over intersex people. Whatever. All right. So there are tens of thousands of people in New Zealand born with variations in intersex characteristics, but New Zealand's first, Jenny Marcroft, says they don't have a place in her law change. And this is from the end of June. We love the bigotry announcements that come on the very end of Pride Month. This one got overshadowed by the US Supreme Court doing nonsense, but we're aware of it now, aren't we? All right, so public submissions closing this week. New Zealand first MP Jenny Marcroft is insistent on using scientific consensus in defining woman and man in her members' bill. Now, we have to have the biggest quotation marks, the scare quotes, if you will, around that, because science doesn't have anything to say on man and woman. Science can tell you about male and female, and how those terms are very, very fuzzy, and there's a lot of overlap, and there's a lot of in between, depending on what it is that you're talking about. But science doesn't really come down on man and woman. That's not a thing that science can really help you with, their bestie. So when asked where intersex people fit in the bill, she replies, "I'm not a scientist or biologist." So she wants to use scientific consensus, but wants to escape the fact her bill sucks with, "I'm not a scientist." Are we using science or are we not, ma'am? So according to the last census, more than 15,000 people in New Zealand know that they were born with variations of sex characteristics, though ministerial advice from health officials puts the total number with innate variations in sex characteristics far higher at 1.7% of the population, which would be upwards of 90,000 people. Now, that's probably just my speculation, but it's probably they got that 1.7% figure from Interact, or a few other sources where Interact got that number from. It's an estimate. It might be high. It's probably low because it's based on certain assumptions that I don't even know how to describe her. She's a multivariant researcher. She digs into sex, sociology, genetics, anatomy, like all kinds of things. But she wrote a book called The Five Sexes, exploring how sex was an invention of culture and how we'd have a better, more efficient culture if we had 5 sexes instead of 2. I believe it's her work that's the basis for that 1.7% estimate. Other people have come at her with different estimates. She says she doesn't care what the estimate is because it's an estimate. She just wants people to acknowledge there needs to be an estimate as a starting point. Holy crow. So it may or may not be correct. Surveys and census data from other countries has shown that non-European countries seem to have a much higher rate of intersex people. More info on that coming in a future video about the history of intersex people, which is on, folks, I'm working through videos. I'm making gestures at the camera and you can't even see me. I have a lot of videos that I'm trying to make because I don't have a lot of time to make videos and I want to get certain information out there. So it's there when I'm not. And the history, unwritten, unspoken, there's a lot of history of intersex people and it hasn't really ever been assembled that I've been able to find. I don't have a complete collection yet. I'm still gathering bits and pieces. Specialists are very hard to find because most of the historians who deal with parts or regions of the ancient world are interested in specific things, like the scholars of ancient Sumeria are interested in the development of cuneiform or the religions of the people of Mesopotamia, or the scholars of ancient Africa are concerned with the rise and fall of empires and the development of technologies. And no one is paying any attention to the prevalence of intersex people in those ancient populations, or what the physicians of those times and places said to each other that remains for us in the historical record. So it's difficult because the people who specialize in those areas of history don't have any information about intersex people in those areas of history. But we're working on it. It's coming. In any case, the estimate 1.7% is probably artificially low in European areas because of European cultural traditions over the past couple of thousand years where intersex babies would be put to death immediately because they're clearly an omen from the gods or something. Well, I suppose God or Jesus, since we're dealing with the past couple thousand years. It's very messed up. But in any case, that video is coming * soon when I can. But a new one is in the pipeline, by the way. I finished it today. It's already available to members. It'll be dropping on Saturday. So keep a weather eye for that. I'm doing a bad job at being more chill and just relaxing, aren't I? All right. Anyway, the legislation in this story, the definitions of woman and man, amendments to the bill introduced by Marcroft passed its first reading last month. The bill would amend the Legislation Act 2019 by adding a definition of woman as an adult human biological female and man as an adult human biological male. Now, this is a little bit more than the typical definition like we normally get. A lot of the bigots like to say an adult human female or an adult human male. Adding biological, unless we're expecting cybernetic life, that doesn't add a lot of value to the description. You know, like are people who are, more than 25% prosthetics disqualified from those categories? Like, what are we talking about here? Why is that word there? What utility does it have? What purpose does it serve? I can't see very much. Like, calling humans biological is just redundant. Like, why not throw mammal in there too? As far as the human part, we could discuss it, but suffice it to say, not exactly relevant to the discussion either, because anyone who might possibly be considered for either term would be a human. Like, no one is trying to bring their dog into the voting booth and say, what? She's a woman over 18. She's female, therefore a woman. Like, get the fuck out of here. So you don't really need the human part either. Adult, that's not a scientific thing. That's not a biological thing. That's an arbitrary legal thing. And if you have doubts about that, check up where the Republican congressmen go on vacation, because it's almost always to the countries with much lower ages of consent than the United States. That's also the reason the Republicans keep insisting we preserve child marriage, because they want a lower age of consent. But that's neither here nor there. We're not talking about Epstein stuff right now. We're talking about the definition of adult. It's a legal term and it's arbitrary. And it varies from place to place. It varies from country to country, state to state, city to city sometimes. So what the fuck does that mean? So all we're left with is, in reference to discussion about humans, male and female. Cool. What do we define those as? I detect a problem. You might detect a problem as well, because it turns out male and female are cluster categories. They're not a thing. It's not an on and off switch. They're clusters of traits, including genetic, gonadal, anatomical, reproductive, hormonal, and other considerations. You could include psychology. You could include legal status, right? Because when you get right down to it, what do you mean by female? Is it a person who is legally female, since we're talking about the law? In that case, a trans person who got their birth certificate changed would count. They would fit that definition. They would be an adult. They would be a human. They would be biological. And legally, they would be female. So what do you mean by female? Get the fuck out of here. Same thing with man. This doesn't work even a little bit. But even setting aside the legal stuff, even setting aside the psychological stuff, if you can make heads or tails of that, you've still got people with mixed characteristics. You've got females with facial hair. You've got males with boobs. You've got people with every kind of mixed characteristic you can think of, every kind of trait. Whatever you can think of, there's people that are somewhere in between, and a lot of people have a lot of things that are in between. So what are we doing here? Where do we put those people? It has sparked protests attended by thousands across the Motu, opposing the bill, characterized as being harmful to the transgender, non-binary, and intersex communities. And this right here, this is kind of important, because a lot of people like to criticize me and others who do similar advocacy and say intersex people shouldn't be in the same category as trans people because they're very different things. Well, we don't know that. There's a number of different scientific disciplines that are converging on a hypothesis that trans people probably are a flavor of intersex. And this is not a new thing. Before around the last third of the 19th century, what we today consider to be trans people were just considered another kind of intersex people. In fact, referencing the upcoming video on intersex history, this goes all the way back to Aristotle. Philosophers before the time of Jesus were writing in their books that even though they believed that males they believed that females were inverted males, they also believed that intersex people were partly inverted males. So it's been a thing. But Aristotle held that intersex people just they were either male or female but had extra parts. So he's not terribly helpful. But other physicians, I believe Galen at the time, wrote that intersex people could be a mix of either the top being one, the bottom being another, the left being one, and the right being another, or the outside being one and the inside being another. And he didn't go into a lot of detail as to what he meant about that. It could have been in reference to people who have one type of external anatomy and the opposite type of internal anatomy when it comes to reproductive organs. But he also could have been referring to trans people, people who look like a female, but internally are male. And in fact, there's some of that in history too. But that's, again, I'm getting ahead of myself. All of this will be in an upcoming video. The point is, transgender and intersex people get the same hate from the same people for the same reason. Go back and watch my intro again if you need additional support on that one. So it's not that we are necessarily the same. It's that our legal fights are the same fights. So fighting together kind of makes sense. So Marcroft said that the bill was not about whether a transgender woman can identify as a woman or transgender men as men. It is about saying where those biological males should go to the bathroom, which, once again, is not actually an issue. I mean, people talk about it, bigots get riled up about it, but it's not a problem that politicians actually need to solve. Here's a pro tip, folks. If you see a politician actually solving an issue, that's not an issue, because politicians don't solve real issues. They make a big deal out of real issues and how they can't do anything about them because their opponents are holding them back. They're preventing action. Those evil other party people, whichever side that happens to be, and shit just never gets done. So they can make a big deal about it in the next election. So when you see a politician who's actually getting shit done, it's something that doesn't matter. It's not an actual problem that needs an actual solution. It's just people making noise to fundraise. So yeah, where do people go to the bathroom? Recently, one of the most virulent bigots running around, one of the people who's been trying to stalk me on every platform, and by stalk I mean stalk, as in try to track down where I live and get info about my family, that sort of thing, proposed that the reason these laws are necessary is because trans people are such a big threat in the bathroom. Him or one of his other fellows tracked down a thing, a story of a trans person accused of assault from over 10 years ago that wasn't in a bathroom. Well, it wasn't in a public bathroom. It was in a private residence. It may have been in the bathroom of the residence, whatever the case may be. That's not, I mean, we never love to see any kind of assault happen. But the fact this person had to go back 10 years to find one possible case that didn't even meet the criteria of public bathroom is kind of telling. So again, there are 0 documented incidences of a trans woman hurting anyone in a public bathroom. There are, however, multiple instances of a trans woman being harmed in a public bathroom. So, there's a thing. That's something to consider. Also, if trans people are such a giant threat due to 0 instances of assault in a public bathroom, then perhaps we might want to do something about the cis people, because it turns out 100% of assaults in public bathrooms are done by cis people. So clearly we need to ban cis people from the bathrooms. Clearly, it's the only thing that makes sense. Or, we could use our fucking brains. One of those things. The bill is about the right to women's privacy and women's dignity, which makes it a very sexist bill and not actually legal, but they'll probably pass it anyway. Women's sports, prison, single-sex places, data collection, and child safeguarding. All of these have consequences if you cannot define women in law. Well, unfortunately, this law doesn't do that. Most of these laws fall woefully short. You may have noticed. Oh my goodness. This is about saying women's rights have been infringed upon and we must protect women's rights. The problem is, they haven't. Women's rights, aside from trans women, women's rights are not being infringed in any way, shape, or form. What you are doing is infringing on women's rights, and not just trans women, because all the transvestigations happening recently, famously, I'm tempted to play a clip of a video by Saros TV. It's all cis women being harassed about looking too manly. You're too tall. You're too muscular. Your hair's too short, which is exactly what we said would happen. You know, it's just the assholes are feeling empowered to police femininity, which is an actual threat to women, not trans people. So fuck off. When asked where intersex people fit, she said that's not part of what this bill is. This is about defining woman and man. So now it's about sex and gender are different. Well, this bill, which defines sex, is about gender, actually. Cool. Then put non-binary people in the bill. You're not talking about sex, but it's based on science. Get the fuck out of here with that politician-y dodging bullshit. So where do intersex people fit? That's not what this bill is. Cool. So intersex people get to pick. And as I mentioned earlier, the science seems to be converging on the idea that trans people are probably just another flavor of intersex, as has been the case through almost all of recorded history. Something like that. Intersex people get to pick. And if trans people are intersex, ta-da! Self-ID's back on the menu, bitches. Fucking hell. Thousands of people in Eritrea, my apologies if I fucked that up, have varying sex characteristics with about 40 intersex variations. We are discovering new ones all the time, but you can find a list of the currently known assemblage on my website, betterthanember.com. In fact, I wanna try a thing. I wanna see shit. I closed the window. Never mind. It's not important. We'll do it another time. We are finding new ones all the time. I'm not a scientist or a biologist, Mark Croft said. No shit. Any atypical development, woman, ma'am. Behold, my friends. Atypical development. What do we see here? All right, so we've got a slightly longer jaw than is normal, artificially thin lips, a slightly broader nose, lower ears, a missing jawline. Atypical development. Cool. You're atypical. Get the fuck out of the woman's room. What now? What the fuck now? Atypical development. Fuck the hell off. Yikes. Let's see. Any atypical development, while that is real and deserves, acknowledgement and respect and all of those things, intersex doesn't actually create a third sex. Okay, so the science isn't actually in on that one. There are people who contend that there are two functional sexes. That doesn't mean there aren't other potential outcomes for human sexuality, but also remember, sex is a cluster category. What does it mean to be male or female? You can have crossover. You can have in-betweens. You can have things that are completely outside the box. It happens a lot. We're not saying it's a third sex, although you certainly could make that argument. Medieval Islamic people sure did. People in India still do, but never mind. You don't have to say that it's a third sex. You could just say there's a blend between the categories. If you want male and female to be very precisely defined little dots on your map of what human sex can look like, then intersex can be the catch-all category outside and between them. It doesn't have to be a third sex. How we classify things has nothing to do with the actual biology. We can classify them however the fuck we want. But if you want to insist there is no third sex, then you gotta put the intersex people somewhere. Where do you put them? And on what criteria? Because we're all a little bit different, aren't we? The human sex is built around 2 reproductive roles. Roles now, not whatever. We'll pass that one by. 2 gamete types. Nope, try again. Male and female, still wrong. And the law can acknowledge and make space for rare cases. Can the law? Can the law, though? Because your law, ma'am, specifically does not address intersex people. What do you mean the law can acknowledge? Your law doesn't acknowledge it. Fuck off. Intersex people in the area oppose the bill. Again, my apologies to the locals. I know you're all watching avidly, and my deepest regrets for not being able to pronounce the name of your region. I assume it's a region. I'm just going to leave it there. Intersex people oppose the bill. In its submission, it said intersex development is biological and a reality of human sex development, and therefore the bill fails on its own test, which is true. The bill is not coherent scientifically or legally. Intersex people existed naturally, and their bodies did not always fit the binary definitions of woman and man, which, again, cultural, not scientific, not biological. The organization recommends the bill not proceed. If Parliament was to pass it, it recommended the law be amended to recognize intersex variations of sex characteristics as a co-equal biological outcome of normal human development and not an exception to or deviation from male and female. And I gotta say, I'm slightly biased on that one, but I like the way that's phrased, because I don't actually see a problem with acknowledging a third sex, because while successful gamete-based reproduction is predicated on combining matching gametes, which in humans generally means little bitty spermies and great big eggies, that isn't the only potential way to do it. It isn't even the only potential way to do it that occurs naturally in humans. But never mind that. Aside from gametes, and remember, while evolutionary biologists may be obsessed with gametes, every other kind of biologist could give less than a shit about them, because sex, depending on which kind of biology you're doing, varies. Certain kind of biologists are much more interested in the DNA, not the gametes. Certain kinds of biologists are much more interested in phenotypic variations or hormonal signals or molecular structures. Sex can mean a whole lot of different things depending on what you're talking about. I mean, for fuck's sake, there's ornithologists who aren't even sure how many sexes there are in bird species. And don't even get me started on fucking insects. Holy hell. The point is, it doesn't have to be 2 sexes. That's an arbitrary thing, not actually based in science. We just made that up. It's convenient in a lot of areas of life, but it's not actually a so-called biological fact. But never mind that. Dr. Jamie Veal, a senior psychology lecturer at the University of Waikato, said the bill lacked evidence to show harm was being caused. Yes, why is this bill necessary? It's pure politics. While there was evidence to show transgender people disproportionately experience discrimination, exclusion, and violence, and that is true. Ask me how I know. Veely, a transgender woman and principal investigator of Painting Ourselves, Aotearosus, I think I may be getting closer on the pronunciation, largest national survey of transgender people. Oh, is this the New Zealand name for New Zealand? Is that what that means? I don't even know. American public schools are absolutely terrible, so my apologies to the entire world for the things I do not know. Said the data collected from the survey showed 43% of respondents often or always avoided public bathrooms because of the fear of problems arising from being trans or non-binary. 19% had been verbally harassed trying to use a public bathroom, and 3% had been physically attacked. Now, to be clear, I have been physically attacked a number of times, but none of them were for using a bathroom. In fact, as a general rule, people don't really, at least in the bathrooms I've been in, don't really talk to each other. About the only interactions that happen are random compliments to each other. I really like your nails. Your necklace is amazing. Where did you get those shoes? Or maybe something, relevant to bathroom stuff. My paper dispenser is out. Do you have a tampon? You know? It doesn't really come up all that much. People, as a general rule, of course, there are rare exceptions, and it's the rare exceptions that need to be kept out of the bathroom, isn't it? Because they're the ones who cause trouble, isn't it? But never mind. The rare exceptions that make a big stink, and it's usually cis women they go after. So they're a threat. They're the creeps. They're the predators. They should, have to use the turf only bathroom or something. Margie says, the unpronounceable thing is pronounced Aotearoa. 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 I am going to fuck this up all day long. But thank you. Aotearoa. Maybe. Steven says, to look on the bright side, if you don't exist according to the law, you cannot break the law. Avast. Ahoy, me hearties. All right, so we get the idea. In her submission, Veely said that it was not her goal to debate whether trans people exist. The existence is a matter of observable social reality reflected in their presence across cultures and throughout history. Right? As I often say, behold, here I am existing and whatnot. And now I have to turn the fucking camera back on. There I am, existing and whatnot. Ah! Okay. Instead, the survey data highlighted the likely impact of the proposed legislation for a population that has already experienced substantial discrimination. Wow, say that 5 times fast. It's almost like a Lin-Manuel Miranda phrase. The survey highlighted the likely impact of the proposed legislation for a population that has already experienced substantial discrimination. I'll workshop it. I'll get back to you. Exclusions, barriers to healthcare, and housing insecurity, among many other ills. The Counting Ourselves survey conducted in 2022 with 2631 participants found that 44% experienced discrimination in the 12 months before the survey, more than double the rate of the general population. 44%. And that's in New Zealand, where the people, broadly speaking, seem to suck a lot less. Participants were more than 5 times as likely as the general population to report discrimination when seeking medical care. Holy shit, that's not great. Now, I do know a couple of trans people from New Zealand who had to go to other countries to get certain kinds of healthcare. That's pretty fucked. But on the flip side, in the United States, it's just fuck you, go die. If you're poor, if you're trans, if you're intersex, if they just don't want to deal with you, if they're just like, you know what, I'm busy, you can just go die in an alley. I don't, I don't have time. I have to get to a golf match or whatever, golf outing, golf fix, whatever the fuck rich people do. Yikes, yikes, yikes. 21% said they'd avoided seeing a doctor or nurse because of fear of being discriminated against or mistreated. Yeah, check, relate, very relatable. Now, I'm in a bit of a difficult position because there are certain things I have to meet with a medical care professional for. But other than that, I very much understand wanting to avoid physicians. Because, oh my goodness, I should just gather a whole bunch of individual people's stories. Like, they're not data, but they're real, and just do like an anthology of the shit people have had to put up with trying to, not even gender related healthcare, any healthcare. Like, y'all have heard me, I don't know how many times, mention trying to get help with my fucking ears. 6 different urgent care physicians, doctors, nurse practitioners, etc. Nobody. It's frustrating. 19% of participants had experienced homelessness. Check, including 31% of Maori. Of the 14% who had needed emergency housing, 21% did not seek it for fear of mistreatment, and 8% who did were denied specifically because they were transgender, which gives credence to the people who did not seek it. Like, people can look at that and be like, oh, well, they didn't even try. It's not our fault they were afraid. Well, it is, because you're mistreating them. They're afraid of mistreatment because they're being mistreated. We need to do better. Fucking hell. More than 50% of participants reported feeling unsafe or very unsafe when waiting or using public transport. Check. Especially at night. Check. Twice the rate for women, 25%, and 7 times the rate for men, 8%. In the last 4 years, 19% of participants have received threats of physical violence because they were trans or non-binary. How many received one threat? Multiple threats? Because holy shit, fam, I've got hundreds from just this month. And by month, I do mean the past 30 days. I do not, in fact, have hundreds in the past week, which is how far we're into July. I get a lot of threats. In fairness, it's not entirely because I'm a trans person, I'm an intersex person, I'm an advocate, I'm a victims' rights advocate, I'm a pro-science advocate, I'm an anti-conspiracy theory people. It's all of those things, but also people who just hate me because an angry person said they should hate me, which is, of course, the best reason. An angry, irrational person bent on revenge. Again, go back to the introduction and what I said about how there's people who want to be inclusive and build a better world, and there's people who want to be exclusive and just hurt everyone they don't like. And that's like the whole thing, is just revenge and rampage on people they don't like. What a sad fucking life. All right, so this goes on for quite some time. You get the idea, though. She's being dishonest, she's being disingenuous, and people are calling her on it, but it doesn't look like she's gonna fucking stop. So, fuck a duck. Let's take a quick break and hear from some apologists participating in the same sort of rhetoric in a slightly different category, except it's also the same category. Be right back.
I have a problem with this stuff being normalized across the spectrum, and specifically, like, why push this on kids? Why introduce this to kids?
It's better because it's better.
How though?
Yeah, because it's better.
Can you make an argument for
Sure,
it?
because it's better.
In what ways?
The ways in which it's better.
I am a depraved wretch. I am a great sinner. I'm a worm, completely undeserving of any love or any grace. I'm nothing. I'm nothing.
You're incapable of being a good person. You're an evil person. You're a terrible person. At the core fabric of who you are. That's why we need laws. We need laws because we're bad people. All of us are bad people.
You can't spell Pride Month without demon. PRIDEMONTH.
If we don't know who the women are, because they are just people, then we won't be able to pull the women up to equality with men.
We have to try to limit the harm. And that means reducing or keeping down the number of people who transition. And that's for 2 reasons. One of them is that every one of those people is a person who's been damaged. But the second one is every one of those people is basically, you know, a huge problem to a sane world.
Transgenderism must be eradicated.
Carl, that kills people.
The LGBT, transgender, grooming our children's minds is a national security threat. We need to hold people for treason, start having some public hearings, and start executing people.
This is war. Kill or be killed. Period. End of story.
I will use whatever gives me victory. I don't care about the truth, and I don't care about the law. I care about one thing. the control.
But then they rigged the election, and now we won, so I'm going to be your president. Then what happened is they rigged the election, and I became president, so that was a good thing.
I agreed with many, many things you said during, in fact, probably more than most other candidates when you were running for president, but I still would not have voted for you because you're an Indian.
I just want to say I feel good about the Republican Party. I feel good about where we're going as a nation. We're killing all the right people and we're cutting your taxes.
It was actually a tremendous blessing to these children for them to be killed and go to heaven and be with God.
How about we all come together and say, let's stop attacking pedophiles?
You can give consent when you're drunk, unless you're all saying, I've been raped and I'm a rapist.
Stop letting people pressure you into thinking.
I want to be ignorant, honestly.
Being a Christian doesn't exclude us from experiencing spiritual dryness.
We're bad people. All of us are bad people.
All right. Now I should clarify. I should caveat that previous clip of videos. It has been brought to my attention that every single one of those people was simply stating a movie quote. It was just a joke, folks. It was all just a joke. They were all quoting a movie, probably, for some reason in the middle of a very serious whatever the fuck they were doing. It was all movie quotes because that's how everything works. Yes, even when you change the quote, so it's no longer a quote, it's still a quote. But never mind. It's just a joke. They didn't mean it. All the people that have been hurt because of their actions, well, they just need to learn how to take a joke. Yes, it's true. All right. The main course for today, because I didn't want to keep y'all waiting too terribly long. The main course, the Riley-Gaines Act. Now, as you may be aware, Tennessee, the volunteer state, it got its name for its eagerness to do violence. They volunteered for every damn war. They volunteered for the American Revolution when they weren't even in part of the territory that was being contested during the American Revolution. They volunteered in the War of 1812. They volunteered for the independence of Texas, which also didn't actually affect them. They have signed up on purpose for every chance to do violence in American history. Volunteer state. That's what that means. The volunteer state. They are so violent and they're so proud of it. My goodness. So on July 1st, they instituted a new law called the Riley-Gaines Act. Well, it went into effect. It was signed like back in April or something. And it attempted to put some women into harm's way. But just like the namesake, Riley Gaines, the swimmer who's famous for coming in 5th place, it kind of fails. So let's look at what the new law actually says and what it means for LGBT people in Tennessee. So here it is. State of Tennessee, Public Chapter Number 1052, Senate Bill 468. Substituted for House Bill 571. I wonder what 571 is. You know what? It's not important. It's not important. All right. Bunch of people, all the legislators have to get their name on it. Fine. It is an act to amend the Tennessee Code annotated Title 4, Title 37, Title 41, Title 49, and Title 68 relative to public safety. Safety, you say? It's safety. Okay. So what does it say? Be it enacted by the General Assembly of the State of Tennessee. Section 1, Tennessee Code Annotated, Title 68 is amended by adding the following as a new chapter. I'm going to skip over the chapter designations. You can always read this for yourself if you really, really want to. Let's stick to the words we can talk about. Okay? So, this is an act. This act is and may be cited as the Riley-Gaines Women's Safety and Protection Act. Now, on the face of it, we get why they did that. It's a political move because they're trying to tie it to Riley Gaines, everyone's favorite horse dewormer saleswoman. But Riley Gaines isn't actually associated with women's safety and protection. As you may be aware, While Riley Gaines was making a big stink out of having to share 5th place with another swimmer, her coach was raping the girls on her team. She was distracting from an actual threat to actual women as hard as she actually could. And she got famous for it. But her entire rise to fame. Now, in fairness, I don't know that she was intentionally trying to distract from her coach, but she was aware of her coach, and instead of making a big deal about that, threw a fit over Leah Thomas because she doesn't actually care about the safety of women and girls. She cares about how many conservative talk shows she can get invited onto. And the Pick Me life has done such wonders for her because not only has she been reduced to selling drugs out of her car on her own video account, but never mind that. Some videos she's released have been talking about the difficulty she's had paying medical bills because she's focused on who's allowed into what room instead of the fact medical bills are out of fucking control. So the leopards are eating very well on that particular face. She got world famous, but not a whole lot else. And she covered for an actual predator while she was doing it. And honestly, I hope her teammates hold her responsible for it. I hope they do. So the purpose of this chapter, to clarify and reconcile the meaning of sex, male, female, and related terms in state law, and to provide protections for women and girls against sexual assault, harassment, and violence in correctional facilities, juvenile detention facilities, public higher educational institutions, and domestic violence shelters, or where women have been traditionally afforded safety and protection from acts of abuse committed by men. Cool. We got our terms. We're gonna try to define sex, male, female, and related terms in the state's law, and to focus on providing protection for women against sex-related crimes. Cool. Very nice. Very nice. So findings. What are the findings? Well, it turns out we're not actually finding anything. We're not looking at evidence. We're not considering the scientific literature. We're not even conducting a fucking survey. We're just declaring things. The legislature declares that, one, physical differences between men and women, however, are enduring. The two sexes are not fungible. It's true. You cannot use your sex as currency, except actually you can. You can, as it. I realize they mean fungible the other way, but I'm going to mock them all the way through this. A community made up exclusively of one bracket sex is different from a community composed of both. And apparently this is a quote from United States versus Virginia, which pertains to some United States codes, and also citing Ballard versus United States. And there's a reference. 1946. Holy shit. All right. Normally, I just let these Supreme Court cases just whatever. It's a reference, and half the time the quote isn't even actually a quote. But I want to know what the fuck a 1946 case is doing in this bill 80 years later. All right, so Ballard versus United States was a landmark Supreme Court case where the court ruled 6-3 that the intentional and systematic exclusion of women from federal jury panels in states where women are eligible for jury service is unconstitutional. What's the relevance, bestie? What the fuck does that have to do with the price of tea in China? Saying you have to be inclusive is the opposite of what this state law is trying to do. It also goes on to say the case originated from the United States District Court in California, where Edna Ballard, leader of the I Am activity religious movement, and her son were tried for mail fraud. Imagine that. You know what? We'll talk about it another time. We know religious people break all the laws all the time. Not important. The Ballards challenged their indictments, pointing out that women were intentionally omitted from the jury. Okay, valid argument. Excluding women from the jury pool denies the defendants the right to a properly conducted, constituted jury. And that's fair. Even if we don't like the defendants, we have to ensure everyone has a fair trial so that when we administer justice, we can say it's fair. It's not just because we don't like the people. If we get accused of using bias to determine who gets punished and who doesn't, why, your country will just descend into a fucking kakistocracy. Which is when the oligarchs just steal everything. They just steal everything. Sort of like is actually happening now. Because when the rule of law is not fair and enforced evenly, then it means fucking nothing. And that's what we have. So yeah, that's an important precedent, but not actually relevant to today's case. Yes, cocks do. Absolutely. Roosters. Throw the roosters in the pots. It's the best thing. It's probably I don't remember actually. It's been a long time since. Now it could well be that half of the chickens that we eat from the grocery stores are in fact cocks, but and who doesn't love putting a nice juicy cock in their mouth, especially when it's seasoned to perfection and covered in special sauce? You know what? I'm going to stop. So we're citing Supreme Court cases that have nothing to do with anything. Amazing. 2, the United States Supreme Court has recognized that there are inherent differences between men and women, that these differences remain cause for celebration, but not for denigration of the members of either sex or for artificial constraints on an individual's opportunity. And it cites that 1996 case again, United States versus Virginia. Cool. We agree. We're in good shape so far. People should not be excluded. In fact, should be celebrated because of their physiological differences. Excellent. Number 3, the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Oh, hey folks, you remember a little while ago, a little bit back, a couple of weeks maybe, we did a show on the legacy of Plessy versus Ferguson and how that's the origin of separate but equal because it challenged the 14th Amendment, or it challenged the way certain laws were being applied under the context of the 14th Amendment, I should say. And they ruled separate but equal. And that's never actually been overturned. Place your bets on whether Plessy plays a role here. So the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America, how many ofs are in that? Holy shit. The Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America, not to be confused with the United States of Russia, the United States of Azerbaijan, the United States of Tharsis, and don't even get me started on the United States is in the outer solar system. Holy shit. Those fuckers. Anyway, the Equal Protection Clause allows for legislatures to enact facially neutral laws of general applicability, such as biologically based definitions of sex. Not exactly. Like, notice there's no citation here. They're just declaring a thing. The Equal Protection Clause, yada yada yada, allows for legislatures no. All right, let's look up the Equal Protection Clause. I want to make sure I get this right. Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. All right, and this is one of the bonuses of doing a live show, is we can look shit up live. All right, so the Equal Protection Clause found in Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, ratified in 1868, mandates that no state shall deny any person within its jurisdiction equal protection of the laws. That's it. That is the law. Yes. Let's pull up the Library of Congress entry. And check it out. All persons born or naturalized in the United States, subject to the jurisdiction of other citizens of the United States where they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Where the fuck does it say state legislatures can make laws that don't do that? Where does it even mention anything about discrimination on the basis of biological sex? You dirty motherfuckers. You're just making shit up that can easily be checked because we just checked it. Get the fuck out of here. No, the 14th Amendment does not say legislatures can enact facially neutral laws of general applicability, such as biologically based definitions of sex. That's not even neutral, assholes. But also, no, it does fucking no such thing. Biologically based definition. So just to be clear, to be perfectly clear, we haven't even left page 1, and not only have they been factually wrong numerous times, they specifically enumerate the exact way in which this law is unconstitutional. They put it right in the bill. Here's why the law is illegal. Amazing. Good star. And you know what? We have an emoji for that. They're getting the actual good star. Boop. We're booping them. And then we're lighting the trash fire. And then we're choosing the bear. Because why not? Fucking hell. 4, biologically based definitions of sex have been consistently applied since our nation's founding. False. Do you know how sex was biologically defined in 1776? Now, I've talked a little bit before about certain individuals of an intersex inclination who've caused a little bit of a ruckus when it comes to how sex-based rights like inheritance or the ability to vote interact with the law in the past. Specifically, voting. There's that fellow in Connecticut who had to have 2 physical exams. And it's not important. There's been a number of cases because it turns out the sex wasn't actually defined in law in 1776. It was just assumed everyone knew what they were talking about. It wasn't until decades later that we started getting the first legal cases having to do with intersex people or any other kind of differences. The number of trans people who showed up, it's wild. It's truly crazy how when a person would just transition themselves at some point in their life, everyone just went with it for the most part. So no, they have not, like, citation needed, right? And of course, there's no citation. Like, that's it. That's it. And just goes on to number 5. So again, they're declaring things that are demonstrably false. But even if there had been biologically based definitions of sex have been consistently applied since our nation's founding, even if that were the case, which it isn't, so what? This is like saying we're declaring as a state legislature that the shape of the earth will be officially taught in Tennessee schools as a pancake. We are doing flat earth in the classroom because biblically based definitions of the shape of the earth have been consistently applied since our nation's founding. A, not true, and B, so what? Even if that were true, even if every single American had always thought the earth was flat up until right this minute, and NASA published a new thing showing the earth is in fact a globe, should we continue to declare by act of law that the earth remains flat? How absolutely stupid. 5. Decades of opinions from the Supreme Court of the United States have upheld the argument that biological distinctions between male and female are a matter of scientific fact. That is a little bit of a weaselly thing there. Technically, there have been opinions spanning decades. That does not mean the Supreme Court decides this every other day and there's a record decades long. Rather, there's decades between cases that even touch on this. But that's neither here nor there. It is a matter of scientific fact that there are differences between the things we refer to as sex characteristics. That's why they're characteristic of sex. For example, it is a scientific fact that there is a difference between an X chromosome and a Y chromosome. It's demonstrable. It is categorical. That's why it is a category. But the fact there is a difference between an X chromosome and a Y chromosome does not necessarily entail that a person will grow a beard or boobs. If you follow, these scientific facts don't have any actual relevance. They're just trying to smuggle in some hidden premises. And sex is an objectively defined category. It isn't. That has obvious, immutable, and distinguishable characteristics. Now, distinguishable characteristics I might give you as long as we're on a cultural basis rather than a scientific basis. You know, in some cultures, men have long hair and women have short hair. In other cultures, it's the other way around. So yeah, there are distinguishable characteristics, but they're cultural. As far as obvious, not so much. See all the cis women being harassed in the bathrooms. You're too tall, you're too muscular, your hair's too short, you wear your boobs, all of these things. They're not obvious. They're never fucking obvious. Get the fuck out of here. But as for immutable, are you fucking kidding me? People have been having boob jobs of one form or another for hundreds of fucking years. What do you mean? Men have been having their extra breasts removed, what we call gynecomastia, but it's just breasts. It's the fact that they're on a male makes it a disorder, whatever the fuck that means. What the fuck? Circumcision it's not gender affirming care, but it's an alteration of a sex characteristic. The fuck do you mean immutable? People have been doing this shit longer than this country has existed. By an entire order of magnitude, if not longer. Get the fuck out of here with this nonsense. So I have a question. Lawyer friends, friends who know lawyers, whatever the case may be. We understand that if a law specifically enumerates a constitutional priority and shows how it as a law is in violation of the Constitution, that makes it unconstitutional. That makes it a bad law. That makes it unenforceable at best. But if a law specifically states something as factual that is demonstrably not factual, then the law may not be unconstitutional, but it is demonstrably wrong. What do we do? Is the law invalid? Is there a way to make the law invalid based on the fact that it isn't factual, that it's based on lies and posturing and bullshit? Like, how does that work? Because in the past, while, you know, our legislatures have gotten things wrong from time to time, there's not such a blatant attempt to just lie and make shit up put right into the laws. So what do? Do we disobey a law that's based on non-factual information? Do we file a protest? Do we hold a recall election? Do the legislators have to pass a different law to replace this one in order to get it off the books? How do you take it through the court? Like, what? This may be new ground. So I'd like to hear from a legal person, what the fuck do we do with a law with a lie baked right in? Not just a scientific inaccuracy, but an intentional deception in the law itself. Wowzers. All right, so chapter definitions. Amazing. This is where we get the definitions. Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Folks, I've been talking a lot. I need to do a little sip, little refresh my mouth here. I'm going to need another break before we get into this. So do remember, not only is the disability pride flag still available, but there's all the space pride flags, all of them, and some clothing and some other things. Do enjoy. In 2024, NASA researcher Rachel Lenz gave the world a flag made from NASA images for Pride Month. On January 20th, 2025, the incoming U.S. administration ordered that Artistic Union of Science and Civil Rights deleted. So I tracked down the original images it was made from, recreated it, and then added even more wonders of the cosmos to update the flag to the current, more inclusive form. On the anniversary of the inauguration, I released it. And it went viral several times. Now you can get a physical copy of that artwork as a full-sized flag or a large sticker, as well as space artworks of the other pride flags: lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer, intersex, ace, and new flags being added all the time. Get one for yourself or give them as gifts and celebrate pride, celebrate science, celebrate resistance, and help support a creator fighting for human rights for all humans. Head to astralpride.com. Incidentally, somewhat related to that, as some of you may be aware, damn, I keep losing my page. All right, I'll just move it over here so I can find it again. Last night I came across a video on the channel MK, and behold, not only have we gone viral on the threads and the Reddits and the Tumblrs, but on the YouTubes as well. I don't think I can make this. Maybe I can make it a little bigger. So yeah, we're in an MK video on. This is my flag in a video on a channel with over 3 million subscribers that's gotten over 50,000 views in 2 days. Now it's uncredited, of fucking course. But the fact that it's there, it's spreading, it's reaching out. I have mixed feelings. I love that people enjoy it so much that they're passing it around. I also don't love that on every single one of these huge posts that go super viral, inevitably dozens of people say, "I want one, where can I get one?" And because it's not credited, no one can fucking find me. And here I am, having trouble affording medicine and groceries and shit, and people want to buy stuff from me and they can't fucking find me. So I love that people love it. It makes me so happy. But the way people like to just like cut off the art from the source so they can like hold the traffic, and it's infuriating. In any case, I am tickled that we made it on a channel that I actually listen to. So that's kind of cool. All right, definitions. Boy means a human male who is a minor. Well, we're running into some trouble already. We're talking about scientific biological definitions. Which part of minor is scientific or biological? You know, how do you tell? Throw out a calendar, get rid of the birth certificate, look at a person. How do you tell developmentally, anatomically, physiologically when a person is a minor or crosses into majority? I'll wait. I mean, I won't, because I won't get a damn answer. But there isn't one, obviously. Everybody matures at a different rate. That's why the law picks an arbitrary number. Because picking a single criteria other than that wouldn't be super effective. Are you going to count pubes? Are you going to, measure reproductive organs? Are you going to see if they grow a beard? Or what are we going to do? How do we scientifically measure that? So it's not biological, it's not factual. It's just a thing people arbitrarily declared. Aunt Jer says the rings on the teeth. That's a good idea. We should check that one out and check it for viability. The second problem, male. I know we've already said, so I'm not going to belabor it. Male is a cluster category. There's a whole shit ton of characteristics. I mean, you can't even, I realize so many of these dipshits, they want to boil it down to penis versus vagina, except you can have both a penis and a vagina. You can have neither a penis nor a vagina. And what they like to say, define a woman. What is a woman? Well, what is a penis? Can you define a penis? Because it's the same thing as a clitoris. A clitoris and a penis are the same organ. One is bigger than the other. But where's the line? What determines, if this is the criteria to determine who's male and who's female, is how big is the penis? This very important matter of law. Where is the line and how did you determine it physiologically, scientifically? At what point does a penis legally become a clitoris? I would love to hear this one. So yeah, it's not scientific. It's not biological. It's shit we made up. Changing room means a room or an area in which a person may be in a state of undress in the presence of others, including a locker room or a shower room. Cool, whatever. I mean, this is arbitrary too, but I don't really care. Like, cool. Correctional facility means a correctional facility. Amazing definition. We love it. Owned and operated by the state, or the housing of prisoners committed to the custody of the Department of Correction. Okay, it's infuriating because these same people get all up in arms about circular definitions, and then they just use them themselves. You know what? It's not super important. What is a correctional facility, though? Like, you could just say prisoners committed to the custody of the Department of Corrections. A place where prisoners are kept is a correctional facility. Like, you could define it that way. These are not hard definitions, and they're still managing to fuck them up. Domestic violence shelter means a community-based shelter for victims of domestic violence. I don't know why that had to be defined, because it's just repeating the name. I mean, I guess adding community-based as opposed to state-run or religious-run, but I don't think they would accept those as exceptions to this law they're trying to pass. Father means a parent who is of the male sex. So we're trying to define father-in-law, which you could argue is a way to try to smuggle in English as the de facto language of the United States. But whatever, that's not super important. My main nitpick is male sex. So if you have a trans man who is a father, who is the father to children, both in terms of social role or in some cases in a reproductive context, it's not super important. Adoptive, an adoptive dad. Why does it matter that the person is male? Like, again, it's a cluster category. How do you define it? You've got male here, but how? Maybe we'll get to it. Maybe it'll be in here. Actually, I think I see it up ahead at number 9. So maybe we'll get into that. But why would you go out of your way to legally define a trans man with a child as a mother? You're just creating fucking confusion. This is incredibly stupid. Female, apparently we're doing our terms alphabetically for no fucking reason, but whatever. Female means an individual who naturally has, had, will have, or would have, but for a developmental or genetic anomaly or historical accident. What? would have what? Okay, let's finish the damn thing. An individual who has asterisk the reproductive system that at some point produces, transports, and utilized eggs for fertilization. Okay, so they're defining female arbitrarily as a social term, trying to ground it in eggs. Cool. Do you see a couple of problems here? So what they're trying to say is a reproductive system organized around the general vibe of using eggs, produces eggs, transport eggs, utilizes eggs. Including transporting eggs, not the best plan. You've probably seen memes running around of men holding a carton of eggs, being like, look, I'm legally female in the state of Tennessee. Now, of course, other states have already done this. They just copy and paste the language. But the fact is, it's not, and this is so stupid. They're getting so pedantic about definitions, and they say eggs. Humans don't produce eggs. Eggs have a shell, friends. Humans produce ova. We colloquially refer to them as eggs because it's convenient for our everyday conversation. But from a scientific basis, humans don't make eggs. So there are now, legally, there are 0 women in the state of Tennessee. There are 0 human females. And again, we're not talking about humans. They're trying to define female. So there are just no females in the state of Tennessee. Legally, female does not exist. What the actual fuck? I've told you folks, they fucked this really badly. They dropped all the eggs, as it were. But whatever. What does it mean to would have but for a genetic anomaly? So no, then this is a person who does not and will never produce eggs, but for genetic anomaly. Now, let me ask you this. What is a male but a female with a genetic anomaly? Like, none of these terms mean anything close to what they think they mean. If not for developmental accident, every male would have been female. Or vice versa, I suppose. It works just as well the other way. Holy shit. Girl means a human female who is a minor. Except now we know females don't fucking exist. But never mind that. Will have. Yes, a girl means a human who will have the vibe of, the essence of, the spiritual reality of potentially utilizing eggs. Fucking hell. Who is a minor? Which, again, not a biological thing. It's a legal arbitrary thing. Juvenile detention facility means a facility that is formally recognized as a juvenile detention facility by the state. Great fucking definitions, guys. I love this ever so much. I am having a fucking blast. I hope you are as well. I hope you're digging this. You're vibing. You're having a good old time. I have to turn my heater down. This is earlier than I wanted to, but we're going to take a little short break, and I will be back in just a couple of seconds. Let's do this one. Yes, the vertical ads don't work super well on horizontal, but they play, and so it's fine. It's all good. Margie says, yesterday at the bagel bakery, I saw that their bagel of the month is called You're an Egg. It was in the queer part of town, too. That is fantastic. And now I have another definition. Because while humans produce ova, not eggs, there is a valid term of egg referring to humans. So a female now in the state of Tennessee means an individual who naturally has had, will have, or would have, but for a developmental or genetic anomaly or historical accident, a reproductive system that involves eggs. So if you are an egg, or if you're a trans person who used to be an egg, or if you could have been an egg, but for a genetic anomaly or historical accident, or you will become an egg at some point in the future, congratulations, you and only you are female, according to the state of Tennessee. Awesome. This is fucking great. Okay, juvenile detention facility means a facility that is formally recognized as a juvenile detention facility by the state agency responsible for monitoring, review, or certification of juvenile detention facilities. Why is this definition here? A juvenile detention facility is a facility run by the Juvenile Detention Facility Agency that certifies it as a juvenile detention facility. Oh, Tennessee. I used to have such high hopes for this state. My goodness. Y'all. Elect some people who have a fucking brain. Like, even just one in the whole state legislature. Fucking hell. Male means an individual who naturally has had, will have, or would have, whatever the fuck that means, but for a developmental or genetic anomaly or historical accident, the reproductive system that at some point produces, transports, and utilizes sperm for fertilization. Excellent. So now, taking both of these definitions at face value, I see this as roughly analogous to the female definition. Humans do, however, produce sperm, but here's the thing. According to this definition, not only are what we would conventionally call a female human not female in the state of Tennessee, unless they're trans or would be trans or will be trans or have been, whatever. But what about people that produce neither and never did and never would have, even without historical accidents or all this hedging? There are sterile people. There are people who have gonadal agenesis. They're completely sterile. What do you do with them? What about other kinds of intersex people, like complete androgen insensitivity syndrome? Their reproductive system is set up to handle eggs, even though their gonads produce sperm. So they qualify as both male and female under this law. Because these are somewhat inclusive definitions. It's naturally has, had, will have, or would have, or but for a developmental anomaly, accident, etc., the reproductive system at some point. So what do you do with a person with complete androgen insensitivity syndrome? She's got a uterus. If not for a developmental anomaly, she'd be baking eggs. But she has testes that are producing sperm. So, but for a genetic anomaly, she'd be making batter. So what do you do with her? Where does she go? Is she both? Can she just go to whatever room she likes? What about people like me, who can do both? Not at the same time, obviously. And not anymore either. But naturally, what do we do? What about people who produce something entirely different? Because we like to pretend there's only two gametes, but there fucking aren't. Humans produce all kinds of interesting things. Humans produce small ova. Humans produce large sperm that don't move around very well. Humans produce things that you can't even describe them using this dichotomous thinking. They're not fertile, because for them to be fertile, they have to encounter something that they're compatible with, and that just doesn't happen. But they're still making them. It isn't just sperm and egg. There's at least 5 different extra gametes I've identified, and I'm not even researching that area of intersex science. So what are we doing? What are they? Where do they go? Where do they pee? Man means a human male who has reached the age of majority. So not a minor. Very biological. Excellent. Again, problems with male because it's a category, not a specific, whatever. Mother means a parent who is a member of the female sex. Same problem as with father. For the sake of brevity, we'll just leave it at that. I know, brevity. I know. You know, folks, I understand. I'm trying to make a meal of this because there is so much other stuff to talk about, but this is so infuriating. I want it to be fun. You know, like I really want to enjoy this time tearing this bullshit apart. So that's what we're up to. And I hope you're down for that too. Okay, let's see. Public institution of higher education means college system of Tennessee and state universities as defined in another legal passage. So it's a definition that refers to another definition, super job. Also not really, I mean, I suppose I can see public institutions means the College of Tennessee, the state universities, as opposed to other kinds of higher education. I mean, first of all, what does that mean? Is it above kindergarten? Because I don't think any of the legislature made it. Why are they trying to regulate where people can go to the bathroom in a building they've never fucking set foot into? But never mind that. Never mind. It's the state colleges, not the private ones. Cool. Gotcha. Restroom means a room that includes one or more toilets or urinals. Urinals. Fucking hell. English is hard, folks. English is hard. Great. 14. Sex. That's it. Just sex. Tennessee law. Section 14. Sex. I assume there's sub-definitions underneath these. 14A. Means an individual's immutable biological sex, either male or female, as determined by anatomy and genetics existing at time of birth. Well, we've got a couple of more problems here. Not only are we reusing those terms that are both contradictory and incoherent in a legal context, but we've added more confusion. First of all, it's not either male or female, depending on how you want to define things, but as it's been defined here, it definitely fucking isn't. And we're saying as determined by anatomy and genetics existing at the time of birth. Why? Why does your adult state depend on what your condition was at your time of birth? Like, take, for example, intersex babies like me. We often are subject to surgeries to alter our birth anatomy so that we'll fit into this pretend binary they all love so much. So do we go by pre-surgery? If that's the case, where do we go? But also, what if your anatomy doesn't match your genetics? Like in the case of a person with complete androgen insensitivity syndrome, your anatomy is opposite to your genetics. So what are we doing? B, does not include gender identity and other subjective terms. Ha! Which do not apply to this chapter and must not be used as synonyms or substitutes for sex. So they're explicitly saying they're trying to keep gender identity out of this. They're trying, but they're failing, because when they say and other subjective terms, all their definitions are subjective terms. What are we doing? Oh my goodness. So you can't say sex does not include subjective terms when all your terms are subjective. Fucking hell. Ahoy, time travelers. Welcome. Lovely to see you all. I'm hoping to get back over and pester Nick and Isandring soon-ish, maybe. I don't know. But thank you for coming. We are currently, I should say, for those of you just joining us, since there are a few, we are currently dismantling Tennessee's Riley Gaines Act. Do feel free to scrub back if you want to see the whole thing, because some of this stuff is just fucking ridiculous. Earlier on, they reference a Supreme Court case that says the opposite of what they need it to say for this law to be valid. It's amazing. 15. Sleeping quarters means a room with a bed and in which more than one individual is housed overnight. Okay. Why more than one? But okay. And woman means a human female who has reached the age of majority. So again, age of majority, you can define it in law, but it's still fucking arbitrary. Like someone drew a line. Some states it's 18, some states it's 16. You can argue that's not subjective. It's more intersubjective, but it's not an objective biological fact. So get the fuck out of here with that. And once again, female is a cluster category. What are we basing that on? Now, they say elsewhere that it's the immutable characteristics, which absolutely can be changed. You can get a boob job, you can get electrolysis to remove body hair, etc., etc. All of them can be changed. And I mean that, all of them. But whatever. They say it's the immutable characteristics that have that. Your reproductive system has to do something that no human reproductive system does. And then I can't even with these people. I can't fucking even with these people. Fucking hell. All right. So woman means human female. Now, in a colloquial sense, female is a cluster category. It's a collection of different traits. Is it boobs? Is it XX chromosomes? Is it vaginas? Is it an estrogen-based system? What is the criteria? It's not clear because we're just making shit up here. This whole section started with the state legislature just declares things. Ay. All right, applications of definitions, distinctions between the sexes. Okay, let's see here. Notwithstanding another law to the contrary, like the 14th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, maybe, or any law enacted by the legislature, or any rule adopted by a state agency or other entity subject to the Uniform Administration Procedures Act, compiled in Title 4, you did a legal reference, when applicable to an individual sex must be interpreted by using the definitions provided in this chapter. Okay, so they're saying other laws, aside from all the laws that say this is dumb, all of them, but never mind. Other laws have to use these definitions, which is going to create some big problems for Tennessee down the line. But never mind that. Oh, goodness. Next section, safety and privacy of women and girls in facilities designated for females. Okay, so we're putting women and girls, not females, into facilities designated for females. And once again, this act earlier reminds us that segregating based on the sexes is in violation of the Constitution. They point that out. They think they're pointing out something different, but they brought it up. We looked it up. They fucked it up. Amazing. So why are women and girls going in these facilities that are designated for females? Because there aren't females in the state of Tennessee, according to this law. So why are you sending women and girls into female facilities? Why aren't you sending the non-existent females into the female facilities? Why aren't you sending women and girls into facilities that are designated for women and girls? What are we doing? A, notwithstanding another law to the contrary, boy, this is going to get old. A governmental agency excluding state residential training facilities shall not prohibit distinctions between the sexes with respect to athletics, correctional facilities, juvenile detention facilities, domestic violence shelters, public institutions of higher education, or other accommodations where biology, safety, or privacy is implied, and that result in separate accommodations that are substantially, okay, I did read that, right? My monitor's very small, folks. My apologies. Substantially related to the important government interest. The important government interest of making sure you pee in the right hole. You can't pee in that toilet. You have to pee in the other toilet. Only the correct toilet corresponds to your pee. It's an important government interest to protect the health, safety, and privacy of individuals in such circumstances. Hey, if you're interested in protecting privacy, if you're interested in protecting safety, maybe make a law that requires bathroom doors to go all the way to the ground. Maybe try that. Fucking hell. On an unrelated note, Margie says, I have tetrachromacy, a color perception superpower that requires 2 carrier X chromosomes. I'm a genetic chimera. You know, as it happens, that was one of the first clues that I was a chimera, but I didn't get it, right? So around, in fact, I mentioned it in the glasses video earlier on the channel, a regular produced video, not to be confused with the live streams. Okay. I should back up. Norm wants to know, what is that? So normal human vision can only see in 3 colors, red, green, blue. A tetrachromat can see in 4 colors. And because of that, the amount of distinctions between colors that you can see is fucking crazy. Or so I understand it. I've never done it any other way, so I can't tell the distinction. But here's the thing. We don't actually see a wider range of colors. The red is still red. The blue is still blue. What's happening is that everyone's rods and cones are in a slightly different position. What's red for me might be 5 nanometers off from what's red for you. And because of that, the green, I forget if it's the rod or cone off the top of my head, but the green color receptor is in a different space for everybody. That's why red-green color blindness exists. If the green is too close to the red, people can't tell the difference. It's not that they can't see red or green, it's that they can't tell them apart. If it's too close to the blue, then you get blue-green color blindness, right? So, when you have tetrachromacy, you have 4 receptors, you effectively have 2 different greens. You have one green that's in one place and one green that's in another place. So it works out to something like you have a yellow and a green in addition to your red and blue. And it doesn't let you see any more colors, but it lets you see the distinctions between colors much more sharply. But the marker for it only happens on X chromosomes, which means in order to have it, you have to have 2 X chromosomes. So when I was diagnosed with that, in 6th grade asterisk, it should have been a big giant red alarm that at least my eyeballs had XX chromosomes. But the optometrist made a point of saying, when this question was raised, is if it only, actually, he didn't phrase it in terms of chromosomes because I was in the 6th grade. What he actually said is that's a thing that happens to girls sometimes, but only girls can get it. And I'm like, only girls, you say? Because I was raised as a boy for most of my childhood. I disagreed very strongly, but no one listened to me. So he corrected it real quick. He said, well, typically only girls. Apparently, there's some exceptions. So it's pretty neat the way we're lied to over the course of our whole fucking lives. But yeah, Bragwin says tetrachromats have red, green, blue, and yellow. That, like I said, that's one way you can think of it. The green and the yellow, they're the same rod, and in fact, or whatever, rod or cone. Like I said, I get those confused. Color receptor. It's fascinating because you have both sets of chromosomes give you a red. Both sets of chromosomes give you a blue. One X gives you a green, and if you have XY chromosomes, that's all you get. The other X gives you a different green. Now, normally, one of them will be dominant, or if they're not dominant, they'll be close enough to each other that there's no difference. But if they're widely different, then you can end up with tetrachromacy. But there's an additional factor. Some eyeballs can receive the data, but the brains aren't equipped to process because you need the linked gene to give you the neurons to handle a 4-color signal. It's not important. The point is the yellow is a green in a different position, and you have half as many because half of your color receptors are the other green, right? So you have, let's say, 100 reds, 100 blues, and most people have 100 greens, but instead you have 50 greens and 50 yellows. That's what that means. And it's fucking crazy. It's wild. Human genetics are so fucking wild. Norm is confused. I'm so sorry. I try to be as clear as I can, but in any case. Oh, goodness. Margie says, I used my tetrachromacy professionally in my print career for 15 years before I ever heard of tetrachromacy. You know, I kind of had a similar thing. I was a photographer for many, many years, and I was using the ability to distinguish colors to create images that it turns out, looked different to me than to my clients. It's fucking wild. So it's trippy. I don't even know what the world looks like to a person with a different vision condition because I've never experienced it. However, on that note, welcome Squiddies. I see the Sundayites have dropped in. Thank you all so much for joining. We are currently going through Tennessee's new Riley Gaines Act and dissecting things. Feel free to scroll back if you want to start, go from the start. There's some fascinating, fantastic stuff. I should say, for those of you who are brand new here, my name is Ember. I am an intersex woman of transgender experience, and on this show, we address all kinds of stuff having to do with the communities of intersex and trans people, mostly like me. And that's what we're doing here, is we're going through Tennessee's new Riley Gaines Act to see how fucking ridiculous it is. For starters, under Tennessee law, females don't exist, not human ones anyway. So it's pretty fucking funny, and we're working our way through. So thank you so much for joining. If you're into this sort of thing, please, please, please hit the subscribe button. It makes a big difference, and I very, very much appreciate it. We do other stuff on the channel too, but I'm not going to take a whole lot of time about that. Poke around, enjoy yourself, make yourselves at home, and thank you, Sunday, for bringing everybody along. I also said thank you, Nick, but I don't think Nick was here yet. I appreciate all you folks coming by. Yes, and the like button. Thank you, Nick. Yes. Okay, let's see. Where the hell was I? Safety, privacy. Right, privacy. We're not going to do anything about the bathroom doors, but we're worried about privacy. Yes. Section B, this chapter does not prohibit a domestic violence shelter, public institution of higher education, correctional facility, or juvenile detentional facility from establishing single occupancy restrooms, changing rooms, sleeping quarters. Well, okay, hold on. We just defined sleeping quarters as a room with a bed for more than one person. How are you going to establish a single occupancy sleeping quarters when sleeping quarters is defined in this law as for more than one person? What the fuck? Whatever. Single person rooms that are not designated by sex. Cool. I don't have an issue with that one. Every facility should be able to establish single person rooms where appropriate, and they shouldn't be distinguished by sex because they're single person rooms. I agree with that part. That one's fine. 2, redesigning a multi-occupancy restroom or sleeping quarters for the exclusive use of another sex authorized under this chapter as needed. Now, what does it mean to have a sex that's authorized under this chapter? Is it just male and females, or is it mothers and fathers? Like, what do we mean? What is a sex authorized? Honestly, folks, I don't even know what to make of that. That's a very weird phrasing. I think what they're trying to get at is that you can take one room and change it to a different purposed room. Like, for example, if you take a multi-occupancy restroom that's designated for the use of males, you can change it to be a multi-occupancy restroom designated for the use of females, but you cannot make it a mixed room because it's a single sex room. But maybe I'm reading that wrong because the sentence is fucking incoherent. Next section, another big passage thing, safety and privacy in domestic violence shelters. Hello, Mark. Mark is here. A dormitory. That's right. Possibly a dormitory is qualified. Mark says, are intersex people now not an authorized sex? It's true. Yes. And in fact, I was talking moments ago about how under the definitions of male and female, intersex people are either both or neither. And that's, not all intersex people, obviously. There's a huge number. You know what? I really have to make the video about intersex terminology at some point, because there's some people that go gung-ho for the term DSDs, or disorders of sexual development. Most intersex people do not like that term. We've done surveys because it's pathologizing, it's inaccurate, or more precisely, it's less accurate, but there are uses for that term. There are individuals who have a disorder of sex development who are not intersex. They are the sex they are, but there's a disorder in the way their sex characteristics develop. So there is a use for it. There is overlap. You can be both intersex and have a DSD, but they're not fucking interchangeable. Anyway, I should get to that at some point. But yes, to answer the question specifically, intersex people legally do not exist in the state of Tennessee. But hey, it's fine. Females don't exist either. So we can all not exist together. It'll be great. Okay, domestic violence shelters shall designate each multi-occupancy restroom, changing room, and sleeping quarters for the exclusive use of any one of the following. Only one, though. Females, which don't exist in Tennessee, as we discussed earlier. Males, which it's so silly. Again, cluster category. Both male and female are cluster categories. They did not state in their definitions of those things what the category is predicated on. It's will have, could have, might be, should have, with the essence of the intent of the vibe, with the intention to do a thing that doesn't even apply to humans. It's fucking wild. Or members of the same family. So you cannot have a room, a multi-occupancy room that's for members of the same family that other people are allowed into, because it's only members of the same family. So we found our third sex, folks. We found it. You know what? I'm going to take a screenshot of this because this amuses the fuck out of me. I'm just going to take this whole section. The three genders: male, female, or member of the same family. Remember, we are in Tennessee, which granted does not have quite the same reputation as some of the other southern states. That whole first cousin marriage thing was a little controversial back in the day. So yes, are you attracted to males? Are you attracted to females? Or are you attracted to members of the same family? Awesome. I love it ever so much. Okay. A restroom, a changing room, or sleeping quarters within a domestic violence shelter that is designated for females or males must be used only by members of that sex. Members of their family cannot enter. You can only meet with members of your family in a designated members of the same family room. Absolutely. That's how that works. An individual shall not enter a restroom or changing room or stay overnight in sleeping quarters that is designated for females or males unless the individual is a member of that sex. Well, now you've got a problem. I want to know the other previous issues in this notwithstanding. But what do you do if, say, for example, a man does break into a woman's restroom and starts assaulting people? Under this law, the male police cannot go in there and stop that male assailant. It has to be female cops. And remember, as defined by this law, females do not exist in the state of Tennessee. But set that aside for a minute. We'll just, it's funny as hell, but let's just leave it out because it makes the conversation more difficult. What if you have no female cops on? There's no exceptions here. It's very absolutist language. An individual shall not enter the restroom or changing room. Now, obviously, no magic force field is going to stop them, but what's the penalty? Is it a fine? Is it 30 days in jail? Like, what happens? Or are we just declaring things with no actual effect to them? The domestic violence shelter shall take reasonable steps to provide individuals with privacy in restrooms, changing rooms, and sleeping quarters for members of the opposite sex. Oh, well, that changes the game a bit. Like, this is a reasonable thing to say. The domestic violence shelter shall take reasonable steps to provide individuals with privacy in restrooms and changing rooms and sleeping quarters. Cool. Period. Put a stop on it. Done. That sentence is complete. Signed and sealed. Oh, wait, there's more. There's more. From members of the opposite sex. So if it's a member of the same sex, no privacy. No safety. No, fuck you. A person with a certain kind of plumbing can not only barge in and attack you, but is encouraged to do so in keeping with the law. Fucking wild. This section does not apply to an individual who enters a restroom, changing room, or sleeping quarters designated for the opposite sex in the following circumstances. You should have put that in the earlier section. You should have. Fucking hell. Like, we're gonna make these draconian laws, and then afterwards we'll add exceptions as a separate subsection. Whatever. To provide services or render aid during a natural disaster, a declared emergency, or when necessary to prevent a serious threat to good order and safety. Please define good order and safety, because you just put a big enough exception, a big enough carve out in there that an entire school bus full of angry protesters could fit in it. What is a serious threat to good order and safety? What makes it serious? What makes it a threat? What defines the order as good? What's good order? What's bad order? What is safety? None of these things are fucking defined in this law specifically about definitions, but also what do they mean put together? What constitutes a serious threat to good order and safety? When necessary to prevent. So if Bob the janitor is going to just blow explosive diarrhea all over the wall of a hospital waiting room, in order to prevent a serious threat to good order or safety, he has to use the women's room. He is allowed to do so under this law. Cool. Very good. I think we could all agree that's a reasonable thing. A person in a emergency of any kind, even a digestive one, should be able to make use of the nearest, most convenient facilities to take care of it. Whether it's a emergency or just we're going to create a health hazard in the hallway kind of thing. Whatever. That's fine. But what do we mean by a serious threat to good order and safety? Is a crying baby sufficient? Because as we've mentioned many, many times in the past, in a lot of places, a lot of private businesses, a lot of facilities of various kinds, the baby changing station is only in the women's room. Now, if a man cannot go into the women's room to use the baby changing station, what do we do? How does that work? And also, what about parents with kids, right? There was that viral thing like a week or two ago of that dad who took his daughters into the women's room. Because here's a pro tip, folks. Here's a pro tip. Whatever the fucking idiots in state legislatures have to say, you go into the restroom corresponding to the identity of the most vulnerable person in your group. Right? Like, it doesn't matter what your plumbing is. If you have a child who needs to go into a restroom for their safety of a certain gender, you take them in that restroom, and the other adults can get the fuck over it because they're supposed to be adults. The needs of the child come first. The same thing goes with a person who's at risk for other reasons, whether it's a mobility issue, whether it's a disability issue. Happy Disability Pride, by the way. I should have mentioned this when y'all came in, since you're all just joining. It is Disability Pride this month, and along with all the other Space Pride flags available on astropride.com, we have a Disability Pride flag. So, you know, get them while they're hot. We have so many Pride flags and clothes and stickers and all kinds of things. Astropride.com. It's linked in the description. But I wanted to say happy Disability Pride, and that reminded me of that, because like disabled people need to be fucking celebrated too. This is ridiculous. All right. This entire law is a serious threat to good order and safety. It's true. It's very true. Holy shit. It's fucking nutty. We're only on page 3. My goodness. Alrighty, folks. I'm going to run a short break and recover a little. You know what? We'll do a classic.
Behold, the atheist's nightmare. Now, if you study a well-made banana, you'll find on the far side there are 3 ridges. On the close side, 2 ridges. If you get your hand ready to grip a banana, you'll find on the far side there are 3 grooves, on the close side 2 grooves. The banana and the hand are perfectly made one for the other. You'll find the maker of the banana, Almighty God, has made it with a non-slip surface. It has outward indicators of inward contents: green, too early; yellow, just right; black, too late. Now, if you go to the top of the banana, you'll find, as with the soda can makers, they placed a tab at the top. So God has placed a tab at the top. When you pull the tab, the contents don't squirt in your face. You'll find the wrapper, which is biodegradable, has perforations. Notice how gracefully it sits over the human hand. Notice it has a point at the top for ease of entry. It's just the right shape for the human mouth.
Fucking love it. Oh, goodness. All right. I decided to turn the camera. We've been going for a couple hours. I'm feeling a little bit better. I still look like shit, but I feel a little better. We'll turn the camera on for a bit. Let's try to get through this. I have so much more to cover. I could literally, if I have the stamina, I could do this for hours. There's so many other things to get into, but I want to finish this damn law. So we'll do that, and then I'll set up another one for another time for the other things. Right. Okay. This section does not prevent a domestic violence shelter from adopting policies necessary to accommodate persons protected under the Federal Americans with Disabilities Act. Well, that's another problem, isn't it? Because, I don't know if you know this, bestie, but gender dysphoria is a diagnosis. It's a valid diagnosis. It's in the DSM-5. And something that can be diagnosed as, you know, a disorder with regards to interaction with everyday life falls under the ADA. So, you know, there's that. But thank you for pointing out there's another way that laws like this are unconstitutional. Love to see it. Young children or elderly individuals in need of physical assistance when using restrooms, changing facilities, or sleeping quarters. Okay, so the law prohibits people from a different sex from helping others of a different sex in the wrong restroom. They cannot enter, but the section does not prohibit a shelter from adopting policies to accommodate those people. Even though law specifically prohibits it, they can still institute a policy if they want. What a law. What an amazing law. Safety and privacy in restrooms of public the restrooms, though. Okay. A public institution of higher education shall designate each multi-occupancy restroom or changing room for the exclusive use of either females, males, or members of the same family. The sexualities, the three genders. Oh, fucking hell. Again, this draws it's going to keep referencing back to the same definitions that don't actually make any damn sense. But never mind. We'll move ahead. A restroom or changing room within a public institution of higher education that is designated for males or females must be used only by members of that same sex. Oh, no homo, though. No. I bet they'll use. An individual shall not willfully enter a restroom or changing room that is designated for one sex unless the individual is a member of that sex. Or what? The janitor can't clean the room because he's got the wrong plumbing? Like what? EMTs can't rescue someone having a heart attack? Come on now. What the fuck? Don't wash your hands. That would be, anti-Jesus or something. The public institution of higher education shall take reasonable steps to provide individuals with privacy in restrooms and changing rooms, but only for members of the opposite sex. Now, if they, what does reasonable steps mean? But also, if they can't enter, congratulations, job done. You don't even need doors on the urinals. Do urinals have doors? I'm amused because it dawned on me as I said that I've lost my memory of what men's bathrooms look like. It's so far in the past, I have to think about it now. And that tickles. It's funny to me anyway. All right. During a public institution of higher education authorized activity or event, why the long lawyers got a lawyer. During an authorized event where students share sleeping quarters, oh my, a student shall not be required to share sleeping quarters with a member of the opposite sex unless such persons are members of the same family. I was kidding about the incest thing before, but now it looks kind of like it's baked into the law. Like, fuck intersex people. Trans people, this law is specifically designed to fuck over, but the intersex people just get left right the fuck out. Let them get run over by that bus. But we're making special carve-outs to allow for the incest folks. Are there so many incest folks in Tennessee that you have to make these carve-outs? Are you going to lose an election if you pass a law that doesn't have special rights for incestuous couples? But only if they're hetero incestuous couples, right? We got... whatever. Such as a parent, legal guardian, sibling, or grandparent, and anything else that would be conducive to making incest porn on Pornhub. And if the student is a minor, come on, Tennessee. Come on. You're having minor incest in institutions of higher education? Public institutions of higher education. My bad. We need the full definition in there. It's not private schools that have to do this, just the public ones. Fucking hell. In any other public institution of higher education, facility, or setting, you need a comma there, folks, but whatever. Where a person may be in a state of undress in the presence of others, school personnel shall provide separate private areas designated for use by persons based on the person's sex, and a person shall not enter these private areas unless the person is a member of the designated sex. How do you tell? Again, the definitions are awful. They are terrible definitions. They're hilarious, but they're terrible. But how do you tell? Because the criteria that they gave us earlier on was what was your anatomy at birth, which again, what do you do with intersex people? And how do you tell? But also genetics at birth. So if you rock on up to a restroom, how do you tell? Like, even if you drop your pants and let someone check, that doesn't determine anything about what was there at birth or what your genes are. A birth certificate isn't going to fix that. Are you going to carry around a karyotype test and a snapshot of your infant genitals? How do you tell? How do you determine? And this is sort of the issue. This is arguably the main issue. If it is true that men are just walking into women's designated areas and assaulting women. It isn't, but if it were, they would just say they're trans men instead of trans women. If you're basing the law on the plumbing you had at birth, then a full-on cis man can walk right in and be like, according to the law, I have to be here. And how are they going to know otherwise? This isn't keeping predators out, it's keeping trans people out, but letting predators in. What the fuck? A public institution of higher education that offers housing for student residents shall provide students the option to share a room only with persons of the same sex. A student must not be required to share a room with a person of the opposite sex. From a legal perspective, I can kind of vibe with this. This is not out of keeping with other states. A student must not be required to share a room with a person of the opposite sex. Now, I would say a person should be allowed to opt into it, but also a person should be allowed to opt into or out of sharing a room with a person of the same sex. In fact, why are we sharing rooms? I understand that at one point, real estate being at a premium, especially for colleges, it was necessary to squeeze as many people into as little space as possible. But that condition no longer obtains. Like, I've been to modern colleges. You know, 2 of my kids have recently been through university or are currently attending university. And the housing is a little bit different these days. They tend to do like group apartments. It's like, I guess sort of a common area. There's like a living room and a kitchen and a dining room area. And then there's short halls with closed bathrooms. And then there's bedrooms. So you could do whatever because the bedrooms are closed. The bathrooms are closed, you know? So it doesn't actually matter. And you don't, it's all just so stupid. It's so antiquated. There isn't a reason for it in the first place, but never mind. The section does not apply to an individual who enters a restroom, changing room, or sleeping quarters designated for the opposite sex in the following circumstances. To perform, okay, now we're getting the exception we needed in the previous section. To perform custodial services or maintenance of a restroom, changing room, or sleeping quarters that is normally used by the opposite sex. To render medical assistance, to render assistance by law enforcement, to provide services or render aid during a natural disaster, declared emergency, or when necessary to prevent a serious threat to good order and safety, to provide athletic coaching services. Right, we have to allow the male coaches into the women. Why does the coach need to be in the locker room? Why does a coach need to be in the locker room? Why? He can coach them in the place they do the sports thing. Why does he need fucking hell? To provide athletic training services in the locker room, in the showers, in the bathroom? What athletic training are we doing in there, Tennessee? What's going on? Can we define an athletic trainer in the context of this law? But all of these things, it's at least they thought of them for the purposes of institutions of higher education, public institutions of higher, whatever. In the correction facilities, the detention centers, nope, none of that. Go die, I guess. But also, these exceptions should be earlier on. And also, the definitions of... It's so stupid. It's starting to hurt my head. Aha! We're almost there, folks. We're almost there. Bear with me just a little bit longer. I do have some funny stuff that we'll get to. You know what? Maybe, depending on how we're feeling after this is over, I'll show a couple of the quick things that I have set aside. It's so fucking wild. All right. This section does not prohibit a public institution of higher education from adapting policies necessary to accommodate persons protected under the Federal Americans with Disabilities Act or adoption of policies necessary to accommodate young children or elderly individuals in need of physical assistance when using restrooms, changing facilities, or sleeping quarters. So, again, you can pass policies that conflict with the law. So the law isn't the law. You can pass whatever policy you want within those guidelines, which include everyone. If you're young, old, or have a disability, what defines young or old? But okay, whatever. It's so silly. It's so damn silly. This section does not apply to a hotel. Well, no, it wouldn't, would it? Because it specifically refers only to a public institution of higher education. Why would it have anything to do with a hotel that is owned or located on the property of a public institution of higher education? Oh, we're putting a hotel on the property of. Whatever. All right. Correctional facilities and juvenile detention facilities. I expect this is basically the same. And so we'll just kind of like breeze through this and then we'll be on page 5. Our correctional facility or juvenile detention facility shall designate each multi-occupancy restroom, changing room, and sleeping quarters for the exclusive use of either females, males, or members of the same family. Giggity, giggity, giggity goo, but not intersex people. No, no, we have to go sleep outside. A restroom or restroom, changing room, or sleeping quarters within a correctional facility. You know what? Hold the fuck up. A correctional, this is the same definition as before, but a correctional facility shall designate rooms for the exclusive use of either males or females or members of the same family. What? You know what? I know what they're doing with the rooms for the members of the same family. We're not covering that right now because I'm an ace person and I prefer garlic bread, but that's neither here nor there. If a correctional facility can only house males or females, period, intersex people are immune to crimes in Tennessee. Intersex people cannot be held anywhere. Not in correction facilities, not in detention facilities. And they specifically define these facilities as housing run and administrated by the Department of Corrections. So even if they buy a house or rent an apartment, it's now a correctional facility because they run it under the definition. So an intersex person, you can't enforce, you can arrest them, but you can't put them anywhere. That's amazing. Good job, Tennessee, legalizing crimes. I love it. I fucking love it. Now, watch me figure out how to make everyone an intersex person. But also, remember what we talked about earlier, how there's no females in Tennessee. So it's wow. Okay. A restroom, changing room, or sleeping quarters of a correctional facility or juvenile detention facility that is designated for females or males must be used only by members of that sex. An individual shall not enter a restroom or changing room or stay overnight in sleeping quarters that is designated for females or males unless the individual is a member of that sex. Which, this is so fucking stupid. Like, you can enter the room but not stay overnight. So I can go into a changing room, but I can't sleep there overnight because under this law, I'm neither male nor female. Or I'm both of them. Or some, who the fuck knows? Because these scientific definitions sure are based on a whole lot of fucking vibes. Yowzers. The section does not apply to an individual who enters a restroom, changing room, or sleeping quarters designated for the opposite sex in the following circumstances: to perform custodial services, to render medical assistance, to render assistance by law enforcement. Assistance. Imagine. Assistance by law enforcement. Help, help, my cat is caught in a tree. There's not a tree in this restroom, ma'am. Wink, wink. Yowzers. To maintain good order and safety by correctional facility or juvenile detention facility employees. Okay, so just no one. There's just no one is prohibited. Like, anyone who's there. The guards can walk into your room and just do whatever they want because they're specifically exempted. Amazing. To provide services or render aid during a natural disaster, declared emergency, or where necessary to prevent serious threat or to good order or safety. I wonder if the purge would count as a declared emergency, because it's kind of an emergency state and it is declared. Can they just declare that, you know what, if you declare the purge, the laws all go out the window anyway, so I guess it doesn't matter. I'm overthinking things, as per usual. The section does not apply to employees of the correctional facility. Oh, we're just exempting them entirely. Employees of the Department of Correction or employees contracted to work at the department at a correctional facility who enter a restroom, changing room, or sleeping room designated for the opposite sex when the employee is carrying out responsibilities related to the employee's job. So just so we're clear, guards raping the prisoners is specifically allowed under this law. This law, the Riley-Gaines Act to protect women. Prison guards raping female inmates, or male inmates, I suppose, specifically allowed. Awesome. Best law ever. The section does not prohibit a correctional facility or juvenile detention facility from adopting policies necessary to accommodate persons protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act, etc., etc., etc. Standard of review. Cool, this must be fun. A law that distinguishes between the sexes in furtherance of this chapter subject to intermediate scrutiny, which forbids discrimination against similarly situated individuals, but allows the law to distinguish between the sexes when there is an important governmental interest. Define important governmental interest. What's important? Is it the ability to rape inmates? Is that important to the government? Because it sure fucking seems to be, since you made a specific carve out allowing it in your law. But okay. Declaring that it falls under intermediate scrutiny is a problem for a couple of reasons. The first is you're telling the judiciary how to do their job, when the point of the judiciary is to exercise judicial review on the legislation. So this is unnecessary, redundant, and is going to piss off the judges. So good job, I suppose, because they will determine for themselves what the proper level of scrutiny is. Second, that's not what intermediate scrutiny is for. Third, that's not what the law says. Fifth, am I on fifth? Maybe I'm on fourth. I'm losing count already. Damn it. I should have put a count. You know, it's not important. Citation needed. If I'd CinemaSins bell, my goodness. Like you can't just declare things. But that's what they're doing, is they're just declaring things. All right, remedies. Oh, I asked earlier, what happens if the law is internally broken? Like you didn't break the law. The law itself is broken. What happens? Okay, let's find. Maybe we'll find out. Maybe we'll find out. An individual who, while accessing a restroom or changing room designated for use by that individual sex, encounters a person of the opposite sex in that restroom or changing room in violation of this chapter, has a private cause of action for declaratory and injunctive relief against the domestic violence shelter, correctional facility, juvenile detention facility, or public institution of higher education. That there's criteria. There are criteria. Intentionally allowed a member of the opposite sex to enter the restroom or changing facility while the other persons were present. Did they intentionally allow the person in? Do they have a policy enabling exceptions? Is it what about people of the same family who are dating? You know, what are we doing here? Or two, failed to take reasonable steps to prohibit the person of the opposite sex from using the restroom or changing room of the opposite sex. See, now we run into another problem of linguistics. You say opposite sex too many times. Which sex are you talking about now? Is it the opposite sex? Is it the anti-opposite sex? Is it the same sex because the opposite is negated itself? Whatever. What is a reasonable step? What determines reasonableness? Who's determining reasonableness? Is putting a sign on the door reasonable? What does this mean? Is there any meaning to it? An individual who is required by the domestic violence shelter, correctional facility, juvenile detention facility, or public institution of higher education to share sleeping quarters with a person of the opposite sex who is not a member of that individual's family is in violation of this chapter, has a private cause of action for declaratory and injunctive relief against the offending domestic violence shelter, correctional facility, juvenile detention facility, or public institution of higher education. TLDR, if No one stops a person of the other sex from entering a room that you're in that is sex specific. You can sue. You cannot call the police. It's not a crime. It's a violation. I mean, you could call the police, but they wouldn't do anything about it under this law. Riley-Gaines Act, just like Riley, completely fucking useless. But okay, you can sue. You have a grounds for a demand of relief. You have a cause of action for declaratory and injunctive relief against the facility, not the person who walked in, against the facility. So this is supposed to encourage the facility in order to take steps to prevent that from happening. But this is a crime that the state-run facilities would be guilty of if an individual breaks this law. This is, how do you enforce this? How does this work its way through the courts? None of this makes any fucking sense. Section 2, there's a Section 2, folks. Section 2, if any provision of this act or its application to any person or circumstances is held invalid, then the invalidity does not affect other provisions or applications of the act that can be given effect without the invalid provision or application. And to that end, the provisions of this act are severable. They could have just said severability. Lawyers would understand that. It's whatever. So Section 2, all the shit we just said, if any part of it is found to be invalid, the rest of it will remain in effect to the extent that it can, given the part that's been found invalid. Well, we just found the definitions are invalid. According to this act, there's no females in Tennessee. So good job, Tennessee. The Riley-Gaines Act for the Protection of Women just actually erased women, legally speaking. So that's amazing. But severability, cool. So the law, which cannot apply to intersex individuals by its own definitions, doesn't apply to intersex individuals. Good job. Amazing. Section 3, the headings in this act are for reference purposes only and do not constitute a part of the law enacted by this act. What do they imagine that the reference numbers on other laws are for? However, the Tennessee Code Commission is requested to include the headings in any compilation or publication containing this act. So the things written in the law aren't even part of the law. They're fucking optional. Amazing job, Tennessee. What are we doing? Section 4. This act takes effect on July 1st, 2026. The public welfare requiring it. I'm going to need a citation on that. In what fucking universe is this not only required by the public welfare, but in the interest of the public welfare? Holy shit. All right. And this is just the signature, April 22nd of May 20. Why do we count years like we do? This is so silly. April 22nd of 2026, approved on May 22nd of 2026 by the governor. Huzzah. Now, I was covering all of this because, as you may be aware, a thing is happening in Tennessee. Okay, in fairness, I also want to make fun of stupid, bigoted laws, especially when they're named in honor of stupid, bigoted people, both of which are objectively doing massive amounts of harm to women. But also, because I'm going to be in Tennessee later this month, check this out.
See what I couldn't see. Keep out the sky, yeah, I advise thee. You can do that easily, proclaiming lineage from scripture. Avadi my head, no. You should know. Keep out the sky, yeah, I told you so. Avadi my head, no. Why you look like that? Now what did I just say? Run the track back. That's you should know. But if you did, you wouldn't be claiming this role. My ancestors were West African.
I think NanoCon's done a great job of facilitating a sense of community. I think
the nurses, the paramedics.
I say prove it, boo. If you Hebrew, then what did I just say to you?
I only talk about my atheism when it comes up.
live my humanism every day.
A tremendous event, well organized, well implemented. The people have been pressured.
Did I just say, oh, yeah, I thought so. I said, da, 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 da. What you gonna do? Can you break it down? Or can you post a clue?
Yay! Oh goodness, I'm so tickled. I mean, I'm a little bit anxious because traveling is always very hard for me, but also there's so many laws that are targeting people like me in the way, but I am tickled. It'll be super neat. This is the only humanist event I was asked to this year. And so if you want to catch me, make sure to get there. If you possibly can. Maybe I'll do a show a little bit later with some of the other people involved to do like sort of explain what to expect, what'll be happening, what we can hope to see later, etc., etc. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Because I haven't actually been to this one yet, so I can't tell you until after I go. It should be pretty neat though. I'm going to be participating in 10% of the workshops. I think, unless they've added more workshops. They may have. But I'm doing one with Godless Engineer on how to do research rather than just repeat bullshit ChatGPT says. Quick research, not like in-depth scholarly stuff, but like if you're talking to someone in an online debate, in an in-person debate, how to find the facts you need to dispel the bullshit being flung at you in real time. It should be pretty neat. I hope y'all are interested in that. And I'll be joining Coleman Watts to do a workshop on sex and gender and political culture war, etc., etc. We haven't actually discussed specifically what we're going to do there, but it should be interesting because I happen to know that while Coleman and I are on the same wavelength when it comes to people's rights and things, we disagree on the science level. That doesn't mean we have to hate each other. In fact, it kind of goes to demonstrate how it doesn't matter with regards to the political aspect. So I hope you all are interested. I hope to check it out. It should be neat. It should be really, really fun. I'm going to be back on as soon as I can. As I often say, I do these shows when I have both the availability and the regular ability. My health is not great, so please make sure you're subscribed. I do other shows also as I'm able. Stay tuned for those. But thank you all so much for being here. Thank you so much for coming. Thanks again to Nick and President Sunday for rating. I very, very much appreciate it, especially the way things are now, especially with the algorithm. Thank you all so much for being here. Stay tuned for the credits because I have a few more thank yous, and we'll see you guys again very, very soon. Until then, try not to die. Thanks to all our patrons and top-level members for June: Miranda, Karen Butcher, Jimmy Tux, Ian Chen, Maya Adkisson, Robin Webster, Lilith, Ember Lynn, The Barely Bearable Atheist, Eric Wander, Jason Jacoby, Liliball Trades, Deviant Outcast, Thriver Scapegoat, Katie Bluebird, Noise Ending, The Godless Engineer, Secular Felinist, and Alira the Free. And you can add your name here next month by signing up at patreon.com/betterthanember or by joining Emberships here on YouTube at the Cinder level, which also includes all the custom emojis, tons of member-exclusive content, member-only live streams, and a bunch of other stuff. I deeply appreciate all the supporters who keep this channel going. Thank you all so much. Because of you, we're building a wonderful community that I'm very proud of.